February 12, 1945, a forest near Colmar, France. The air tastes of iron and frozen mud. Snow, once a pristine blanket over the Alsace, is now a churned gray porridge of earth and slush, pockmarked by artillery craters. It clings to the dark wool of Anneliese Richter's greatcoat, melting into a damp chill that seeps into her bones. At 19, she is a Nachrichtenhelferin, a signals auxiliary for a Wehrmacht command post that no longer exists. The command post is now a splintered collection of logs and radio parts half buried in the filth 100 meters behind her. The crackle of static she had lived by for months has been replaced by a different sound, the sharp, metallic bark of an M1 Garand rifle. It is a sound that means the end. Her breath plumes in the frigid air, each exhalation a small, desperate flag of surrender. Beside her, huddled in a shallow ditch behind the corpse of a Panzer IV, are 5 other women. Ilse, the eldest at 24, clutches a field telephone handset as if it were a holy relic, its wire severed and useless. 2 young Flakhelferinnen, barely 17, weep silently, their faces smeared with dirt and terror. They were all supposed to be the protected, the vital support of the Reich, the lightning maids connecting the sinews of war. Now they are just the debris left behind by a collapsing front. The rumble is what paralyzes them. It is not the familiar guttural cough of German engines. It is a deeper, more consistent growl. Through the skeletal remains of the pine trees, she sees them. M4 Sherman tanks, their olive-drab hulls obscene against the white snow, lumbering forward with an indifferent, mechanical confidence. They push through the tree line, their machine guns chattering in short, violent bursts, chewing up the landscape. American infantrymen move behind them, ghosts in greatcoats, advancing in a low crouch. They are not the goose-stepping caricatures from the newsreels. They move with a fluid, predatory grace. "They are here," Ilse whispers, her voice a dry rasp. It is over. Anneliese's mind, a frantic machine, replays the training, the lectures, the letters from the Eastern Front. She thinks of the political officer who visited their unit a month ago, his face red with conviction as he described the Americans. Degenerates, gangsters, barbarians who would show no mercy, especially to the women of Germany. They would be used, brutalized, discarded. The images, fueled by a steady diet of propaganda, are vivid and terrifying. A cold knot tightens in her stomach, far colder than the winter air. Better a bullet, she thinks. Better the end right here in the mud. A voice, amplified by a bullhorn, cuts through the chaos. The words are foreign, a series of harsh alien syllables. English. Then a different voice, speaking clumsy, heavily accented German. "Throw down weapons. Come out. Hands on head. Now." Slowly, hesitantly, Ilse pushes herself up. Anneliese follows, her limbs feeling like lead. One by one, the 6 women rise from their ditch, their hands shakily placed on their heads. They are exposed. The world seems to shrink to the space between them and the advancing soldiers. An American GI, his face young and grim beneath his helmet, spots them. He raises his Garand, shouting something to his comrades. More rifles swing in their direction. For a long second, Anneliese is certain this is it. The volley will come, and it will be over. She closes her eyes, her mother's face flashing in her mind. But no shots come. The silence is broken only by the crunch of boots on snow. She opens her eyes. The GIs are approaching, their weapons still aimed, their expressions a mixture of caution and surprise. A sergeant, a man with tired eyes and a thick mustache, gestures with his rifle. "Kommen Sie, schnell." They are herded out of the tree line and onto a frozen track, joining a growing column of captured German soldiers. The men are hollow-eyed, their uniforms ragged, their faces a mask of defeat. No one speaks. The guards are efficient, their movements economical. They frisk the men for weapons, their hands firm but not rough. When they reach the women, they pause. The sergeant speaks to another soldier who nods and calls for a female officer. But there is no one. He sighs, then motions for them to simply join the line. There is no leering, no crude jokes she was told to expect. There is only a weary professionalism that is, in its own way, more unnerving than open hostility. It is not what she was prepared for. As they are marched toward a waiting convoy of trucks, the cold reality begins to dawn. This is not the end. This is the beginning of something else. Something unknown and perhaps far worse. The ship's engine is a constant, low thrum that vibrates through the steel deck, through the thin mattress of her bunk, and into her very marrow. It is a sound that has become the entire world. For 10 days, Annalise Richter has seen nothing but the churning, slate-gray water of the North Atlantic. The vessel, a Liberty ship named the SS George Shiraz, was built for cargo, not prisoners. 3,000 German POWs are crammed into its cavernous holds, a city of defeated men. Annalise and nearly 200 other captured women, nurses, auxiliaries, secretaries, are segregated in a slightly less crowded compartment, a metal box that smells of diesel, disinfectant, and fear. At night, the darkness is absolute, broken only by the faint red glow of a few bulkhead lamps. It is then that the whispers start. The women huddle together, sharing rumors like scraps of bread. They are taking us to Canada, a nurse from Hamburg insists, to work in the forests. Another, a former clerk from Berlin, shakes her head, her voice trembling. No, it is America. My cousin was captured in Africa. He wrote a letter through the Red Cross. He said they put them in camps in a place called Texas, a desert. They work them until they drop. The stories feed their terror, each one a grotesque variation of the propaganda they had all absorbed. They would be sterilized. They would be used for medical experiments. They would be handed over to the Vengers, the Jews who ran the American government, to suffer for the Reich's crimes. Annalise listens, the knot in her stomach tightening. She tries to reconcile these apocalyptic visions with the mundane reality of their journey. The American guards, mostly older men who seem as bored and seasick as their prisoners, are not monsters. They are methodical. They distribute the food, a strange, soft white bread, canned meat, and bitter coffee that is always hot, with a detached efficiency. One afternoon, a guard, a corporal with a kind, wrinkled face, sees her staring out a porthole. He approaches, holding a small paper-wrapped rectangle. He offers it to her. She flinches, expecting a blow. He just raises his eyebrows and places the object on the ledge. "Chocolate," he says, in a slow, deliberate voice, and walks away. Annalise stares at it. A Hershey's bar, a piece of the enemy's world. She picks it up, her fingers trembling. It feels like a trick, a test. She breaks off a tiny piece and puts it in her mouth. The sweetness is overwhelming, a shocking contrast to the bitter privation of the last year. It is a small kindness, but it is so deeply confusing, it feels like a form of psychological warfare. Her conversations with Ilse are her only anchor. "Why are they doing this?" Annalise whispers one night, the ship groaning as it rolls in the heavy seas. "Why feed us? Why this politeness? It makes no sense." Ilse, ever the pragmatist, lies on her bunk, staring at the steel ceiling. "Perhaps the stories were wrong," she says, though her voice lacks conviction. "Or perhaps this is just the beginning. They fatten the pig before the slaughter." The phrase hangs in the stale air, chilling them both. The days bleed into one another, a miserable, gray monotony. Then, one morning, the rhythm of the engine changes. A new sound carries on the wind, a distant foghorn. A murmur of activity spreads through the compartment. The women crowd the few portholes. Land, a hazy, indistinct shoreline beneath a pale sky. As the ship steams closer, a colossal shape resolves out of the mist. A robed woman, her arm raised, holding a torch. Annalise stares, mesmerized. The Statue of Liberty. She has seen it in films, in magazines, always portrayed as a symbol of a decadent, corrupt nation. Now, seeing it in person, silent and immense, it feels like a judgment. The ship glides past, into a harbor teeming with more vessels than she has ever seen in her life. The skyline of New York City is a serrated blade of impossibly tall buildings, a testament to a power she cannot comprehend. They have crossed the ocean. They have arrived in the belly of the beast. As armed MPs herd them onto the gangplank and towards the docks, the sheer scale of the enemy's homeland feels like a final, crushing blow. The fear of what comes next is a physical weight, pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. The journey by land is a state of sensory deprivation. After being processed at a facility near the New York docks, a blur of paperwork, questions in broken German, and a delousing that stripped away the last of their dignity, Annalise and the other women are marched onto a train. The carriage windows are covered with thick black blinds, plunging them into a perpetual twilight. The only light comes from the dim bulbs in the ceiling and the slivers of daylight that leak around the edges of the shades. They are moving, but they have no idea where. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the track becomes a new form of timekeeping. Clack, 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 clack. It is the sound of them being swallowed deeper and deeper into the vast, unknown continent. The guards, a new set of soldiers from the military police corps, sit at either end of the car, their faces impassive, their M1 rifles held loosely across their laps. They are not conversational. They enforce the rules with curt gestures. No standing, no loud talking, no peeking through the blinds. But the women peek anyway. Annalise finds a small tear in the corner of her blind. Pressing her eye to it, she watches America scroll by in a series of disconnected, baffling vignettes. The industrial landscapes of the North give way to rolling hills, then to vast, flat plains of red-brown earth. She sees wooden houses with wide porches, utterly different from the stone and stucco of her village. She sees automobiles, so many of them, racing along paved roads. She sees Black people for the first time in her life, working in fields under a sun that feels strangely warm for winter. She has only ever seen them in Nazi racial hygiene posters, depicted as subhuman caricatures. Seeing them now as real people, toiling in the dirt, confuses an entire pillar of her education. Who are they? Are they slaves? It is a question she dare not ask. The food continues to be a source of bewilderment. They are given sandwiches on the same soft white bread, filled with a sweet purple jam or a salty brown paste she learns is called peanut butter. They drink Coca-Cola from green glass bottles, the cold, sweet fizz a bizarre sensation. It all feels decadent, wasteful. Back home, her family would be lucky to have a slice of black bread and some thin soup. Here, the prisoners are fed this strange, rich food. Ilse's words echo in her mind. They fatten the pig before the slaughter. Days pass. The air inside the car grows thick and humid. A damp, heavy heat seeps in, a physical presence that makes their wool uniforms feel like torture devices. This is not the climate of Canada. It is not the desert of Texas. It is something else, something alien and oppressive. The train slows, its brakes hissing a long, final sigh. The clatter of the wheels ceases. For a moment, there is only silence, thick with anticipation. The guards stand up, their movements sharp and purposeful. One shouts a command in English. The heavy doors at the end of the car slide open with a deafening groan, flooding the carriage with brilliant, blinding sunlight. The heat hits them like a physical blow. "Raus, alle raus, let's go," a guard barks, gesturing with his rifle. Annalise shields her eyes, her pupils struggling to adjust. She shuffles forward with the others, down the steep metal steps and onto a gravel platform. She breathes in. The air is thick, smelling of damp earth, pine needles, and something floral and sweet she doesn't recognize. Before them stands a sprawling complex of single-story wooden buildings, their roofs covered in black tar paper. They are stark, functional, and look unnervingly new. A high fence of woven wire, topped with cruel-looking barbs, surrounds the entire perimeter. Watchtowers stand like silent sentinels at the corners. A large, neatly painted sign near the gate reads in stark black letters, Camp Aliceville. They are in a place called Alabama. The name means nothing to her. She looks at the faces of the other women. Their fear has been replaced by a deep, weary confusion. This is their destination, a meticulously constructed cage in the middle of nowhere. The quiet efficiency of it all is more menacing than any chaotic, blood-soaked battlefield. This is not a place for a quick death. This is a place for something else entirely. The processing at Camp Aliceville is a study in methodical, passionless bureaucracy. Annalise and the other new arrivals are lined up in the dusty camp square, the Alabama sun beating down on their heavy wool coats. They stand in formation, a habit ingrained by years of discipline, waiting for the shouting, the dogs, the inevitable brutality that must mark the true beginning of their captivity. They wait for the slap of a glove, the butt of a rifle, the screamed insults meant to break their spirit. Instead, a woman approaches. She is an American officer in the Women's Army Corps, a captain, her uniform crisply pressed despite the heat. She is tall, with short brown hair and an expression that is neither kind nor cruel, but simply professional. She stands before them, hands clasped behind her back, and speaks in clear, measured English. Beside her, a young American soldier with a weary face begins to translate, his German fluent but academic. "Welcome to Camp Aliceville," the translator begins, his voice flat. "This will be your home for the duration of the war. You are prisoners of war under the Articles of the Geneva Convention. You will be treated accordingly." The captain speaks again, her gaze sweeping over the assembled women. The translator continues. "There are rules here. You will obey them. Roll call is at 0600 and 1800 hours. You will keep your barracks clean. You will perform the work details assigned to you. Any failure to comply will be met with punishment, loss of privileges, solitary confinement. Is that understood?" A nervous murmur ripples through the ranks. This is expected. Discipline, punishment. But then the captain says something else, a short, firm statement. The translator's voice follows. "Listen very carefully. There will be no physical violence against you from any guard or camp personnel. You will not be struck. You will not be beaten. We do not operate that way. In return, you will show respect to the guards and staff. Violence or disrespect from you will not be tolerated." The words fall into a deep, profound silence. Annalise looks at Ilse, whose brow is furrowed in disbelief. The other women exchange confused, frightened glances. No beatings? It is an idea so foreign, so completely contrary to their entire understanding of war and power, that it feels like a trap. A lie designed to lull them into a false sense of security before the real torments begin. Huddled with Ilse as they are marched toward the delousing station, Annalise whispers the question that burns in her mind. "Wo sind die Schläge?" Where are the beatings? Ilse shakes her head slowly, her eyes wide. "I don't know," she murmurs. "This is wrong. It feels wrong." The days that follow only deepen the confusion. They are given showers, their filthy uniforms taken away and replaced with plain, dark blue work dresses and U.S. Army issue undergarments. They are assigned to long, clean barracks, each furnished with 20 metal cots, each with a mattress, a pillow, and 2 gray wool blankets. The food is served in a large mess hall. It is simple, but plentiful: stew, potatoes, vegetables, and the ever-present soft white bread. The interrogations begin. Annalise is called to an administrative building. She walks in, her heart pounding, expecting a cold, damp cell and a man with blood on his knuckles. Instead, she is shown into a small, neat office. A young American officer, an intelligence lieutenant, sits behind a wooden desk. He gestures to the chair in front of it. He offers her a cigarette, which she refuses, and a cup of coffee, which she accepts. He asks her questions in calm, conversational German. What was your unit? What was its strength? What was the morale like in Colmar? He is not asking about conspiracies or secrets. He is collecting data, like an accountant. There are no threats, no raised voices. When she cannot answer a question, he simply nods and moves on. The entire experience is so civil, so bizarrely normal, that it leaves her feeling more off balance than any physical abuse could have. She returns to the barracks that evening and lies on her cot, staring at the wooden rafters. The camp is quiet, save for the distant hum of a generator and the chirp of insects in the humid night air. The routine, the cleanliness, the absence of overt cruelty, it is a constant, disorienting pressure. This place was not built to break their bodies. It was built for something else. And as she lies in the quiet darkness, a terrifying new thought begins to form. Perhaps the most effective way to break a person is not to destroy their bodies, but to systematically, peacefully, and efficiently dismantle their entire world. Life in Camp Aliceville settled into a strange and disquieting rhythm. The sun rose, hot and white, over the pine forests of Alabama. The bell rang for morning roll call, the American guards counting them off with a bored, practiced air. The days were filled with mundane tasks. Annalise was assigned to the camp laundry, a huge, steamy building filled with industrial washing machines and presses. She spent 8 hours a day folding sheets and khaki uniforms, the repetitive motion a strange sort of anesthetic for her racing mind. The physical labor was tiring, but it was honest. It was work, not torture. It was in the small, unguarded moments that the foundations of her world truly began to crack. In the mess hall, she saw a guard give the leftover bread from a meal to one of the older prisoners, a woman who reminded him of his grandmother. In the library, a small room stocked with donated books and magazines, she hesitantly picked up an issue of Life magazine. She could not read the English well, but the photographs spoke a universal language. She saw pictures of American families having picnics, of sprawling cities with rivers of automobiles, of smiling movie stars. These were not the grim, desperate faces of a degenerate nation on the brink of collapse. This was a country of vibrant, confident people. It was the world the Reich had sworn was their enemy, and it looked nothing like the caricature she had been taught to hate. Divisions began to form among the prisoners. A small, hard core of ardent National Socialists, led by a former BDM, League of German Girls leader named Ursula, tried to maintain party discipline. They organized secret meetings, sang patriotic songs under their breath, and whispered threats against anyone who seemed to be growing soft, anyone who was fraternizing by showing basic civility to the guards. They called women like Annalise weak, traitors to the Volk. "They are trying to poison your mind with their kindness," Ursula hissed at Annalise one evening, cornering her near the barracks. "It is a trick, a Jewish trick. They want you to forget who you are, to forget Germany." But Annalise was beginning to wonder what Germany even was anymore. She received a letter from her mother, routed through the International Red Cross. It was heavily censored, but the words that remained painted a grim picture. Her town was in ruins. Her younger brother was missing on the Eastern Front. There was no food. People were starving. Her mother's desperate hope was that Annalise was safe. Safe? Here, in an enemy prison camp, she had 3 meals a day, a clean bed, and was in no danger of being hit by a bomb. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. The real turning point came not as a single event, but as a slow, dawning realization. It happened while she was talking with Ilse, sitting on the steps of their barracks as the sun set, painting the Alabama sky in hues of orange and purple. "Do you remember," Annalise said softly, "what they told us about what happened in '38, on Kristallnacht?" Ilse nodded grimly. "They said it was a spontaneous reaction from the German people, angered by the murder of a diplomat in Paris, that the Jews had brought it upon themselves." "I saw an old American newspaper in the library," Annalise continued, her voice barely a whisper, "from 1938. It had pictures, synagogues burning, Shops with Jude painted on them, their windows smashed. It it didn't look spontaneous. It looked organized. It looked like the SA. She paused, the weight of the heresy she was speaking hanging between them. The Americans knew, the whole world knew, and we were told it was a lie. That was it. That was the crack that broke the dam. If that was a lie, what else was a lie? The glorious victories on the Eastern Front? The purity of the Aryan race? The demonic nature of their enemies? The entire edifice of her belief system, constructed carefully over a decade by teachers, youth leaders, and the omnipresent voice of the Führer, began to crumble. It was not a violent explosion, but a slow, silent collapse. The humane treatment at Aliceville was not a trick. It was a mirror. It reflected back at them the brutality of the system they had served. The absence of the fist, the silence where the beating should have been, was the most powerful indictment of all. It forced a question more terrifying than any interrogation. Not, who are our enemies, but who have we become? Annalise looked out past the wire fence, not at the guards in their towers, but at the vast, green, and profoundly foreign country beyond. The war for Germany was lost. She now understood that her own war, a battle for the truth within her own soul, had only just begun.